Hello there, this is Al24 News live from Algiers, and coming up next in our program. President of the Republic Abdelmajid Tebboune received in the People's Palace the national team football winners of the FIFA Arab Cup 2021 in Doha, Qatar. The death toll from Typhoon Ray has surpassed 200 in Philippines, with humanitarian workers reporting complete carnage in coastal areas. Why they said the storm had left homes, hospitals and schools wrecked to shreds. Also coming up, Honduras of thousands of Sudanese citizens took the streets on Sunday in rejection of October 25th coup. Protests continue against the coup even and the reinstatement of the Prime Minister last month. The left winner Gabriel Boric has been elected Chile's next president with 55% of votes, which defeats his far-right rival Antonio Cast to become the country's youngest president. Starting from Algeria, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, received in the People's Palace the national Algerian national team, winners of the FIFA Arab Cup 2021 in Doha, Qatar. Senior state officials attended the ceremony, including Speaker of the Council of the Nation, Salah Goudjil, and Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman, as well as Lieutenant General, Chief of Staff of the People's Nations Army, Shingriha.
Monsieur le Président, voilà. Monsieur le Président.
بتقديم سيدة الكأس
Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le Président.
And just after having golden picture with the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, Sports Minister, and Abdulrazak Sabkak stated that what happened should really motivate us to work harder to achieve more in the future.
The game in Qatar was hard and stressful. Since we are from the field, we can tell. But thank God the determination and perseverance of the players made the win possible. It was a historic reception. In such victories, the President wanted to share the joy with all the players and Algerian people. This should really motivate us to work harder to achieve more in the future.
As well as the President of the Algerian Football Federation, Mr. Sharafuddin Amara, said that the atmosphere of the reception was so emotional, and I'm really honored that I have been part of it.
We were received by the President of the Republic, and we are grateful to him. After a great triumph of the FIFA Arab Cup, we were honored to have this ceremony where the national football team was honored. The team only did their duty by honoring the national colors. As you witnessed, the atmosphere was absolutely amazing.
The players and the coach Majid Bouguera's statement was so full of joy and pride, thanks to the 6 games unbeaten in the Arab Cup champions.
Thank you for the welcome. Yesterday was an amazing welcome. The atmosphere reminded me of Omdurman, as I was a player back then. We thank the President for this warm welcome, which is a source of pride for the players, staff and fans. We're tired because we haven't slept since the game. Big thanks for all the fans and Algeria.
It was an amazing welcoming ceremony where the President honored us and congratulated us on the victory, and he was really happy with the titles we achieved. And we are grateful for the President's support. And as players, we are delighted and proud that we could make our fans and people happy.
This was Majid's first experience in FIFA Arab Cup. And thank God it was a successful one. He's a coach that has a lot of aspirations and ambition, and we wish him all the best.
The atmosphere was tremendous. I can't find the words to describe the amazing feelings I had. I thank all the people and fans for giving us a warm welcome. We congratulate ourselves on this victory. We wish we would make more achievements in the near future.
Thank goodness we gave all we have to achieve this win and make our people happy. As you witnessed yesterday, we celebrated until 2 a.m. We're really proud of these achievements, and it's an impetus for us to do more in the future.
To a different matter now, U.S. health officials urged Americans on Sunday to get booster shots, wear masks and be careful if they travel over the winter holidays, as the Omicron variant, regarded across the world, as was set to take over as dominant strain in the United States.
The government is gearing up for the next phase of battle. In a 2-year fight against a virus that has killed 100,000 people in the United States and disrupt every aspect of daily life. The President Joe Biden said for the unvaccinated, we are looking at the winter of severe illness and death for unvaccinated, for themselves, their families, and the hospitals. They will soon overwhelm. But there is good news. If you are vaccinated and you have your booster shot, you are protected from severe illness and death. 2 U.S. Senators, Democrats Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker, said on Sunday they tested positive for coronavirus disease 2019, but were experiencing only mild symptoms.
Elizabeth Warren said on Twitter she was grateful for the protection provided against serious illness that comes from being vaccinated and boosted, and urged other Americans to do the same.
Are those million cases going to be sick enough to need health care and especially hospitalization? This is a big remaining question, Margaret. Is this virus actually not quite as capable of causing severe disease?
A big message for today is, if you've had vaccines and a booster, you are very well protected against Omicron causing yourself disease. So anybody listening to this, who's in that 60% of Americans who are eligible for a booster but haven't yet gotten one, this is the week to do it. Do not wait.
Despite the threat from the more transmissible Omicron variant, life returned to near normal in Sydney last week, with almost all tough curbs lifted ahead of Christmas as vaccination rates rank among the world's highest, explaining that the new variant of the virus will not come to an end. Therefore, Australian authorities urged the population to move away from fear in the midst of the highest transmissible of the Omicron variant. New Zealand authorities said today, Monday, they had linked a 26-year-old man's death to a Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine after the person suffered myocarditis, a rare inflammation of the heart muscle, after taking his first dose. The death is New Zealand's second link to the known but rare side effects from the vaccine, after health authorities in August reported the woman had died after taking her doses. COVID cases are still moving forward in Europe, and most countries are taking serious procedures to overcome this new outbreak. Let's follow this report to have a clear idea.
Many countries are reimposing travel restrictions and other measures weeks after the variant was first detected in South Africa. Germany's health authorities announced that the United Kingdom had been added to the list of COVID high-risk countries, which will mean tighter travel restrictions. French Education Minister Jean-Michel Blanquer said that the government has no plans to extend the Christmas school holidays because of the rapid spread of Omicron variants. Italy's government is considering new measures to avoid the surge in COVID infection during the holiday period. Local newspaper reported amid worries over the spread of the Omicron variant. After holding a meeting with ministers on December 23rd, Prime Minister Mario Draghi could impose an obligation on the vaccinated to show a negative test to access crowded places, including discos and stadiums. Shopping streets in the Netherlands were closed and people's Christmas plans were in disarray as the country began a lockdown aimed at limiting an expected COVID-19 surge. Prime Minister Mark Rutte announced the shutdown, ordering the closure of all but the most essential stores, as well as restaurants, hairdressers, gyms, museums, and other public places, from Sunday until at least January 14th.
Senator Joe Manchin announced his rejection of the current legislation Build Back Better bill on Fox News Sunday. Manchin expressed his concern about the inflation and the cost of the program, effectively ending the Democrats' hopes to pass Biden's $1.75 trillion social spending plan.
To the people of West Virginia, I can't vote for it. And I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't. I've tried everything humanly possible. I can't get there.
The Chinese government's top diplomat said on Monday that Taiwan is a wanderer that will eventually come home and not a chess piece to be played with, reaffirming Beijing's determination to bring the island under the control. China claims democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory and has its past 2 years stepped up military by diplomatic pressure to assert its sovereignty claims to anger in Taipei and deep concern in Washington. Debts that have fueled China's economic over the past years are now biting back. This comes after most of Chinese property giants are facing debts that may affect the countries and the whole continent. Osama Yadi on Watch Follow.
Asia is expected to face tense issues in terms of economy. According to banking experts, China's debt distress will affect the economy of the whole continent. Property developers, including the biggest groups in China, have lots of opaque liabilities that may or may not be reflected on their balance sheets, making it hard to assess the company's true credit risks. Volume of such issues has been badly dented by concerns over the financial health of Chinese developers, with issuance of high-yield corporate bonds in the Asia-Pacific region falling in 2021 to its lowest in 3 years. Across the Asia-Pacific region, there was $50.4 billion worth of high-yield corporate bonds issued this year, the lowest since 2018 compared to $63.9 billion in 2020, according to Refinitiv figures. In higher grades of credit across the region, a strong start to the year means volumes will be higher for 2020 compared to the last year. Privately placed bonds often issued by special-purpose companies with obscure names. One tactic to keep the debt off balance sheet and off the radar regulators is to provide guarantees for the bonds that apply on all days except June 30 and December 31st, when the developers compile their financial statements.
A large section of Hong Kong voters abstained from voting Sunday to choose their representative in the city's legislature, where a minority of them are elected by universal suffrage under new rules implemented by Beijing, and only patriots can run for this, while other seats are appointed by committees and interest groups. The participation rate did not exceed 29.3% for this time. The death toll from Typhoon Ray has surpassed 200 in Philippines, with humanitarian workers reporting complete carnage in coastal areas, where they said that the storm had left homes, hospitals, and schools ripped out to shreds. A spokesman for the police told reporters on Monday that at least 208 people were killed and 52 were still missing after the storm carved a trail of destruction in central and southern provinces late last week. A French migrant charity has fled a judicial complaint accusing the French and the British Marines and the Maritime Service and Coast Guard of ignoring distress calls from the migrants which were aboard in inflating ships. The complaints accuse Maritime Service of fleeing to deliver help to 27 sunk migrants. More in this report.
Migrant tragedy, which sparked the diplomatic row between the United Kingdom and France, has resurfaced as a French migrant charity filed a judicial complaint claiming that French and British rescue services ignored distress calls from migrants aboard an inflatable ship that sank in the middle of the channel. The filed complaint accuses the heads of the French maritime services as well as the British Coast Guards of ignoring the calls of help and pleas that were launched by the migrants aboard water, considering the act to be involuntary homicide and failing to deliver help. The November 24th incident, which left 27 deaths in the midst of youngsters who were trying to cross the channel looking for a better life, and sparked a diplomatic rift between the two European countries. Leaders of both conflicting sides over the tragedy exchanged accusations, traded blames, and the situation got verbal. French President Emmanuel Macron showed his dissatisfaction with the methods of British government in the concern.
J'ai discuté il y a 2 jours avec le Premier ministre Johnson, de manière sérieuse. Pour ma part, j'entends continuer à appliquer ce que je fais avec tous les pays et tous les dirigeants. Je suis surpris des méthodes quand elles ne sont pas sérieuses.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced that the tragedy was shocking and the British government was to cooperate with the French counterpart. However, no steps were taken in the channel, which is still taking lives.
You know, a pretty dangerous stretch of water in potentially unseaworthy vessels. We want to stop that, working with the French, make sure that they understand that this isn't a good idea. This is a very, very bad and stupid and dangerous and criminal thing to do.
In response to the filed complaint, French maritime services stated that rescuers investigate every call that they receive and that an inquiry was underway into the calls received that night. On the other hand, British Coast Guards declined to give any comments about the complaint.
Families in Guatemala held a funeral in southern Mexico for the victims of truck accident on December 9, killing at least 50 migrants. Most of them are immigrants from the Central American countries. The incident had highlighted the dangerous migrant face on their way to the U.S. border. Often at the hand of the human smugglers known as coyotes, hundreds of migrants have died from violence or accidents in the country in the last decade. Iran conducted an unannounced air defense drill at a nuclear facility for the second time this month, with the senior military commander warning of crushing response to any attack from the Zionist entity. According to the semi-official Fars news agency, sounds of anti-aircraft fire were heard Monday near the Bashmir nuclear power planet's Gholami Rashid. One of Iran's top military commanders declared that if the Zionist entity attacks Iran, our armed forces will immediately attack all the centers, bases, routes, and spaces used to carry out the aggression. Over 22,000 people were evacuated throughout Malaysia Sunday as the country faces some of its worst flooding in years. The tropical Southeast Asian nation oversees stormy monsoon season at the end of the year, with seasonal flooding regularly causing mass evacuation. Islam Seed clarified.
In one of the most intense rainfalls in the country, homes full of water, turtles, snakes roaming in the area. This is what Malaysia has witnessed. Heavy floods where thousands of people driven out of their home. Dozens of bus routes in and around the Malaysian capital Kuala Lumpur have cancelled, and train services leading to the port city of Klang were postponed. According to the Malaysian Prime Minister, rainfall on Friday and Saturday was an equivalent to total monthly amount in normal conditions. Meanwhile, he promised instant aid to flood victims as well as an initial allocation of $23.7 million to repair damaged houses and infrastructure. Sunday marked the latest hit by floods to be in Perak City at a time where other 6 states were suffering from the disaster. An ultimate figure of 21,000 people who were evacuated to relief centers. Rescue efforts were underway for those who stuck in their vehicles and outside of their homes. More than 66,000 personnel from the police, army and fire department have been mobilized. The floods also disrupted operations at 3 water treatment plants in Selangor, with taps expected to run dry for tens of thousands in parts of the state and the capital. Malaysia's worst flooding in decades took place in 2014, forcing some 118 people to flee.
The Ethiopian medical claimed that the army was able to regain control of the town of Lalibela again from the Tigray front. Footage showed that the visit of the Deputy Prime Minister Damak Miko Nan to the historic town after his taking government control over it will be on the highlights. Hussam Burkan.
Official media reported that the Ethiopian army had once again taken control of the town of Lalibela, which is listed on the UNESCO World Heritage, and showed footage of the Deputy Prime Minister during his visit to the town. It is not clear when government forces regain control of the town, which is spiritually important to millions of Ethiopian Orthodox Christians, and which has changed hands several times during the conflict with the rebel forces from the northern Tigray province. Tigray forces took control of it last August, but government forces got it back at the beginning of December, in a continuous military campaign that has forced the rebel forces to withdraw. It is noteworthy that the year-long armed conflict between Tigray forces and the central government has taken the lives of thousands of civilians and attracted forces from the outside of the country in a fighting that spread to the neighboring regions of Amhara and Afar, which were invaded by the Tigray forces.
The left-winger Gabriel Boric has been elected Chile's next president with 55% of the vote. Boric defeated his far-right rival Antonio Costa to become the country's youngest president. More details with Nabil Khazini in these votes.
Gabriel Boric, 35 years old, becomes the youngest president in the Chilean history. A student leader who came to fame after leading protests and asking for social reforms in Chile in 2011, took advantage of the Chilean revolution in 2019 against social inequality to offer a progressive program where he promised social reforms, free education, and universal health care. Gabriel Boric addressed an impressive crowd of several hundreds of people who gathered to celebrate with him his victory.
The coming years will shape the future of our country. That's why I guarantee you that I'll be the president who takes care of democracy, who listens more than talks, who firmly combats for the privileges of those in need, and who works every day for a better life of the Chilean family.
Boric won with 55% of the vote, securing victory over his right-wing opponent, José Antonio Costa, who trailed with 44%. Costa congratulated his left-wing opponent, saying that Boric deserves respect. The outgoing Chilean president, Sebastián Piñera, held a video conference with Boric to offer his government's full support during the 3-month transition.
I want to congratulate you and wish you the best of success in your government. More than 8 million people voted. It is one of the elections with the highest citizen participation in a long time. Democracy compliant, and Chileans have given an example of democracy. You were part of that. I congratulate you.
Lo felicito. Gabriel Boric will become Chile's president when he is sworn in on March next year. His term lasts until 2026 and will encompass a period of social and political transformation for the country.
35 years old, what an achievement. New German Defense Minister Christian Lambert said on Sunday that Russia cannot impose the views on NATO on regional security. At a time of high-latent tension between Moscow and the West, Lambert was speaking during a visit to Lithuania, or let me say Lithuania, her first overseas visit, where she inspected military units deployed in NATO country. Hundreds of thousands of Sudanese citizens took the street again on Sunday in rejection of October 25th coup again. Protests continue against the coup even after reinstatement of the Prime Minister last month. Ayadu Osama has clarified.
Hundreds of thousands of Sudanese citizens took the streets again on Sunday in rejection of October 25th coup. Protests continue against the coup even after the reinstatement of the Prime Minister last month. The revolting population demands no military involvement in the political scene of the country. Demonstrations marched towards the presidential palace, marking the 3rd anniversary of protests which touched off the population and led to overthrow the long-lasting autocrat Omar al-Bashir. Protesters crossed the bridge linking Omdurman with Khartoum city, despite the heavy deployment of security forces in the region, as they blocked all bridges leading to the capital. Clashes erupted between demonstrators and security forces less than a kilometer away from the presidential palace. Security forces fired tear gas and grenades to try to break up demonstrations and disperse the crowds. Demonstrations were also planned in different cities of the country, as the shared images at the beginning of the marches which chanted, "People are strong and retreat is impossible." Security forces sealed off major roads leading to the airport and army headquarters, including joint army and parliamentary rapid support forces, which were heavily deployed around the presidential palace.
Yemen's rebels have called for talks with the Saudi-led coalition to bring an end to the conflict in the war-torn country. Houthi Minister of Foreign Affairs Hisham Sharif said on dialogue and the UN participation and of international partners may result in an end to the war. The Houthis want dialogue to make an arrangement for a ceasefire and the opening of Sana'a airport alongside other sea and land crossing. Sharif said, adding that the Saudi-led coalition must lift the siege on the country and the withdrawal of any foreign forces. The growing economy and humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan was responded by Muslim nations. Pakistan opened an extraordinary meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in Pakistan capital Islamabad to discuss any solution to address this issue. Marwa Unwatfur.
Envoys from 57 Islamic nations and observer delegations gathered for the biggest conference on Afghanistan since the United States-backed government in Kabul fell in August. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation urged its member and non-member states to mobilize the necessary financial resources in order to organize and implement an immediate humanitarian assistance plan to support the people of Afghanistan. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said the meeting of the foreign ministers and officials from the 57-nation group was intended to stimulate support for Afghanistan, and anything that could help the situation should be considered.
That Pakistan hosted the first extraordinary session of the Council of Foreign Ministers in Islamabad in January 1980. 41 years on, Pakistan is again obliged to host another extraordinary session to discuss the ongoing humanitarian crisis.
U.S. Special Representative for Afghanistan Tom West, who is attending the meeting, has expressed his intention to work with humanitarian groups in the country and to find mechanisms to deliver aid. The emergency in Afghanistan, with millions facing hunger as winter sets in, has caused mounting alarm. Taliban officials have asked for help rebuilding Afghanistan's shattered economy and feeding more than 20 million people threatened with hunger. Some countries and aid organizations have begun delivering aid, but a near collapse of the country's banking system has complicated their work.
And for more international, let's follow this roundup by Zara Furjani.
Authorities in Vietnam prepare to move 1 million people from low-lying areas along the south coast on Monday as typhoon approached after it battered the Philippines with floods and landslides that killed more than 230 people. A special reporter of the United Nations says the international community should build a better partnership with Bangladesh and cut off the Myanmar military leadership in dealing with the Rohingya refugee crisis. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres arrived in Lebanon on Sunday, hitting out at political leaders who paralyzed the country in the face of its people's suffering.
Seeing the suffering of the people of Lebanon, Lebanese political leaders do not have the right to be divided and paralyze the country. I urge the country's politicians to work together to resolve this crisis. And I call on the international community to strengthen its support to Lebanon.
Following Brexit negotiator David Frost's resignation, Liz Truss was appointed UK new Brexit negotiator by Boris Johnson. Truss shared on Twitter her pleasure to take the responsibility for the EU and was welcomed by Simon Coveney via a tweet on his account. Thailand has sent over 600 Myanmar refugees who fled fighting between the military and ethnic rebels back across the border. Human Rights Watch's Deputy Asia Director urged Thailand not to rush refugees back to Myanmar.
To be more precise, another failed for economic major events. Nabil Khazini compiled this report for us. Let's follow.
Crude oil prices fell by 4% on Monday. Brent crude futures plunged 1.9% to $72.16 a barrel by midnight. This is due to fears of impending restrictions on economic activities to contain the current increase in spread of the COVID-19 Omicron variant worldwide, which may increase the risk of demand slowdown. In Europe, the European stocks dropped the most in over 2 weeks as investors worried over the threat of Omicron. The increase in infections and the new restrictions have made their appearance on the European stock exchanges this Monday, which have suffered falls of around 2% since the opening due to investors' fear of a worsening of the situation and the economy before the sprouts of the latest variant of the coronavirus. Omicron affects the world's economy, reached the World Economic Forum, which has postponed its annual meeting in Davos for the second consecutive year. The meeting was intended to be held next month, but the forum said in a statement that continued uncertainty over the Omicron variant had forced a rethink. The World Economic Forum now planned to host their meeting in early summer. In Turkey, the Turkish Lira hit a new falling record. The currency fell to a new record low of 70.8 against the dollar on Monday. The Lira is down about 57% this year, about the same extent as declines in 2001 financial crisis that brought Erdogan's party to power. The currency fell more than 6% on Monday. In the US, gasoline prices have dropped as holidays approach. The average price of gasoline in California as of last week was $4.67 a gallon, only 2 cents per gallon less a month ago. In Oregon, it was $3.77 a gallon. The US is the biggest consumer of gasoline worldwide, and more than 100 million Americans are going to hit the roads this holiday season.
Hundreds of people dressed in Santa Claus hats and running shoes participated in colorful Santa Run in Caracas on Sunday. The event, the first since the beginning of the pandemic, attracted more than 1,400 participants nationwide, including those racing in wheelchairs, creating a sea of red as they moved through the streets. Some ran in Venezuela's capital, and while others, local races held in their states. In the heart of Brazil's streaming hot Amazon region, a sled would be a little used to Father Christmas. Instead, perched on the prow of a rambling riverboat, he waves cheerily to the excited children who waited for him at a river edge. His red and white costume stands in a sharp contrast to the emerald green tones of the world's largest tropical forest and the muddy brown waters of the Solimões River, which feed into the mighty Amazon. It is launch week for NASA's James Webb Space Telescope, and as the days count down to its Christmas event launch on December 24th, we are taking a look at the science promised by the huge new space observatory. The details in report by Nadia Kasmi.
The NASA-led James Webb Space Telescope, which includes hardware designed and built at UCL and which will imagine the very first stars to shine in the universe, is scheduled to be launched into space later this month. The NASA-led James Webb Space Telescope is one of the great space observatories following Hubble, will be launched on board the Ariane rocket from Europe's spaceport in French Guiana on or after Friday the 24th December.
Every new telescope put up in space has always found something they didn't expect, something new.
The James Webb Space Telescope is the biggest, most complex telescope that NASA has ever launched into space.
Telescopes are time machines. Webb will push us back into the realm of the very first stars and galaxies in the universe.
The Webb telescope is designed to see as far back in time as we can possibly see luminous objects, when the universe was maybe 100 million years old.
We have a suite of very powerful instruments to study the atmospheres of planets. Webb will be very helpful to us in the search for life in the future.
It will take 30 days for the telescope to reach the Lagrange point 2, about 1 million miles from Earth, where it will begin operating. UCL astronomers will be among the first to analyze its observations of the universe. The mission, a partnership between NASA, the European Space Agency and the Canadian Space Agency, is expected to make breakthrough discoveries in all fields of astronomy by investigating the light of the universe at invisible infrared wavelengths.
Wonderful. This year was marked by the Cup Fashion Wars that began on Friday in the Senegalese capital and ended on Sunday evening, with focus on sustainability. The edition gathered 18 designers from all over Africa and was organized by the Senegalese Adama Perry.
The 19th edition of Dakar Fashion Week gathered 18 designers from all over the continent and was organized by its initiator, the Senegalese designer Adama Ndiaye, known under the name of Adama Paris. The edition was easier to organize than last year, thanks to the easing of COVID-19 restrictions. There was excitement in the lobby of a large hotel in downtown Dakar, where the parade of young fashion designers was held on Sunday. The models quietly paraded around the corner to test outfits and make final adjustments before the show. Adama Paris, event organizer and Senegalese stylist, explained the idea of slow fashion and environmental impact decrease.
I don't want to live with fashion as the European dictates it. I don't want to do that anymore. I want women who respect so many different things, more than just bodies. Of course, they will always be models, beautiful ones. I want to be able to give room to other women, to different women.
For the designer, it is also important to highlight the young Pan-African designers who bring a refreshing fashion that does not follow the trend books.
My collection is called Hope. We try to use materials that are usually thrown away in nature. Here in Africa, we see a lot of plastics everywhere. For this dress, we use golden plastic. It's just to show that we can use the things we throw away and make dress out of them.
Moussa Versailles, a fashion designer, talks about his collection and his use of recycled materials. The Dakar Fashion Week is one of the continent's longest-running fashion exhibitions and was marked by responsibility it showed to operate in a sustainable way.
To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Much appreciated to our news team and to the technical staff. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. Good night.